Well, I think it would be a catastrophic mistake for the United States to withdraw, but I think it's a real possibility in a Trump administration.
So, Ambassador, I wanted to ask you about what a Trump presidency means for foreign policy from your experience as his former national security advisor. If we start with Ukraine and Europe's defense, we know that Trump spoke with Vladimir Putin several times since leaving office. With that in mind, do you think that Trump will seek closer ties with Russia if he's reelected?
Well, I think it's important to understand Trump doesn't have a national security philosophy. He's ad hoc, episodic, transactional, views things through the prism of whether it benefits him. He can't tell the difference between his interest and the nation's interest. And he doesn't do policy as we conventionally understand it. So it's one reason it's hard to predict what he's going to do, which is not a virtue in national security, particularly with your friends and allies. It's a real problem, undercuts the credibility of America's deterrent and its reliability as a partner internationally. In the particular case of Ukraine, which will be colored by Trump's overall dislike for NATO, he's already said he would get Zelensky and Putin in a room; they'd solve it in 24 hours. Well, that isn't going to happen. Uh, but it won't be because Donald Trump failed, because Trump never fails. So it must have been one of the other two guys in the room. It must be Zelensky or Putin's fault. And this is where I think his friendship, at least he thinks he's friends with Putin. I think Putin thinks he's an easy mark, but Trump will gravitate toward Putin. It will be difficult for Zelensky and potentially very bad news for Ukraine.
Do you think that Trump will follow through on his threats to leave NATO?
I think he will. Look, I think he didn't during his first term because he got distracted, and that's probably my best advice to anybody in Europe or the U.S. who doesn't want him to withdraw in a second term. He's got a short attention span. Talk about something else, find something else he's irritated about, and moving away from it. Trump doesn't really understand the concept of collective defense alliances. This may sound oversimplified, but it's the way he views the world. He thinks we're defending Europe. We don't get anything out of it, and Europe isn't paying us. So why are we doing it?
What happens to NATO and Europe's defense in that kind of a scenario? I mean, they've been trying for the last few months to kind of Trump-proof the alliance, but it's a lot of money that the alliance does receive from the United States.
Well, I think it would be a catastrophic mistake for the United States to withdraw, but I think it's a real possibility in a Trump administration, and I think that would effectively mean the end of NATO, and it'd be a terrible blow to the West interest, not just in the North Atlantic, but around the world. The same thing could happen to our bilateral alliances with Japan and South Korea. He doesn't understand what we get out of it, as if the benefits provided, the additional strength provided by the alliance, and all of our alliances don't mean anything to him because he just doesn't understand the reality that a president has to deal with.
I mean, we're also seeing North Korean troops inside Ukraine, and Trump was the first American leader to meet with a North Korean leader in 2018. If that kind of continues in another potential term, could we see, the triggering of further tensions on the Korean Peninsula?
Well, I think as with Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, so too with Kim Jong Un, who, as Trump has repeated during the campaign, he said he and Kim Jong Un fell in love.
I have confidence in him. I like him. He likes me. We have a good relationship. We'll see. We'll see what happens. He definitely likes sending rockets up, doesn't he? That's why I call him Rocket Man. But
was that helpful? Do you
we
think
have a very good relationship, and we'll see what happens. It may work out, it may not. But in the meantime, it's been a long time. President Obama said it's the #1 problem, and it would have been war. You'd be in a war right now if it weren't for me. If I weren't president, you'd be in a war right now in Asia. And who knows where that leads. That brings in a lot of other countries.
So that's the relationship he has with the North Koreans. I think he'd like to find something that would provide a lot of publicity in a second term. He was the first American president to meet with a leader of North Korea, first American president to cross the demilitarized zone in Korea. I think he's looking for maybe the next thing would be to go to Pyongyang to meet with Kim Jong Un. So he's not going to mess that photo opportunity up by criticizing North Korea for sending 10,000 troops to Europe. I think this is really a wake up call for Europe about alliances not just in the North Atlantic, but considering Asia as well, because Asia is coming to Europe.
Is there a case though that, Trump is so his kind of unpredictable nature, a lot of people say actually might, keep our adversaries in check because they might be afraid of him?
No, that's not the way it works. Both certainly your allies have to understand what your overall strategic policies are. That's what gives them confidence that staying together with the United States will benefit everyone. Now, having tactical surprise against your adversaries, yeah, absolutely, that is very desirable. But if they don't have any idea what your plans are at the strategic level, and Trump doesn't think at the strategic level, that allows them to consider opportunities that they may try to exploit. So it's in part because Trump doesn't understand these geopolitical issues, what the stakes are, what's important to the United States, what's important to our adversaries. His erratic behavior simply says to the adversaries that this is somebody who is vulnerable and doesn't it lacks knowledge. And it says to the allies, the U.S. under his leadership is unreliable. So the end result is very detrimental for the United States.
What about the Middle East and the tensions that we're seeing around, Israel and Iran and Hamas? I mean, what do you think that a Trump presidency would mean for that region?
I don't think you can really tell. He has been saying on the campaign trail, I want this war between Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah to be over by the time I take office. He just wants these problems off his table. He has said in the case of the war in the Middle East, Iran's ring of fire strategy around Israel, he said it with respect to Ukraine, that if he had been president, neither of these wars would have occurred. Now, that statement is neither provable nor disprovable because it's entirely hypothetical. He just doesn't want to have to deal with problems that arose during the Biden administration that he knows himself, although he won't say it, has no idea how to handle them. And I think that's one major factor for both Trump and Kamala Harris, that when they take office, their agenda will already be filled up with growing crises. I think it's a product of the weakness of American national security policy under Biden, but it's a very different world than it was 4 years ago, and Trump really has no clue how to find a path through it.
Do you have faith that Kamala Harris would be less weak than Biden?
I don't know what she would do. I think the best prediction you can make, because she didn't have any experience in foreign policy before she became vice president, is that for the first year of her term, plus or minus, it will look a lot like the Biden administration. I think she will bring in new advisors in the White House and in the cabinets, but I think they will come from the same general Democratic Party establishment. So it will be different faces, but I don't think the advice will be all that different. Circumstances will change in the world and that will change the policy, but the best you can say for her is about the same. Perhaps the one exception there would be in the Middle East, where I think she would likely pursue a more not anti, but a less pro-Israel view than Biden did. Well, it's very hard to say what Trump will do. No guarantee that his basically pro-Israel performance in the first term will be repeated in a second term. I think his relationship with Netanyahu now is actually pretty strained. And if he thought he could find a deal with the supreme leader in Iran that would end everything, this is the guy who wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. That doesn't mean he would know what he was doing, but the prospect of doing something that Biden didn't do, which is finding a resolution to the conflict, might appeal to him. And he came very close in 2019 to meeting with Javad Zarif, who was then Iran's foreign minister, which I think would have been a big mistake, but he was very, very close to it in August of 2019. So I don't discount the possibility that somebody in Iran could reach out and say, let's make a deal, and he might be tempted to do it.